For those who regard style, finesse and balanced performance as a true measure of a car, and for whom history and pedigree adds to this matter, then some classic marques take the shine. Alfa Romeo is one of such designs with an influence in the history of cars. These great designs can be expressed as eloquently in a modest city car as it can in a concept car masterpiece. Today, we meet one of the owners of an Alfa Romeo. Gailing Mays owns an Alfa Romeo Sprint. His meticulously spruced Sprint Alfa is so dear to him, especially because it took 4 years to restore it to what it is today. For more than 10 years now, the veteran has entered his car in the annual Concours d'Elegance competition. During the 51st edition of the event that happened in 2023, he was second in position. Gailing says he appreciates an opportunity to show off his car, that he truly values its history, design and beauty in the greatest win. Being on the charts of Concours d'Elegance, an event for exquisite cars, glamorous motorcycles and excitingly participants, is truly remarkable for any car enthusiast that is up for a competition of elegance. Now let's have a look at Gailing's brilliantly designed and the level of refinement that made these wheels very thrilling.
This car is made in Italy, in Milan, where all Alfa Romeos originate from. It's a 1967 model, so it's quite Mosaic, and it's got a very powerful engine. It's a 6-cylinder engine with twin overhead camshafts, if that means anything to you, and it produces about very close to 200 horsepower. It's a touring car as opposed to a sports car. And what I mean by that is that when you get to looking at the interior, it's very plush in the interior. Whereas a sports car would have rather more primitive kind of seats in it perhaps, and be looking to sort of save weight by not putting any extras on it. This car is, as it is a touring car, and it's designed to be just that, comfortable, a big engine which works very modestly. You haven't got to rev it every time you go. So it's a cruiser, if you like, of its time. Now, what is unique about this engine? First of all, it's 6 cylinders, okay, with overhead camshafts, for the want of the description, and it has 3 twin-choke Weber carburetors. And this is the secret to this car running properly, is getting each of these 3 in tune with one another. And they're very temperamental, I have to admit, but nonetheless, they're all part of the original specification of the car. What is unique about this particular car is that it has 3 carburetors. Each of them has 2 chokes in them. And the trick here is knowing how to actually tune these so that they are all in tandem. But there you go, that's the engine compartment. We'll come and have a look inside. And the dashboard is classic of its time, but is quite appealing in its own way. It is a 4-seater, although there's not a lot of room in the back for two adults. I've got the seats right back as it happens. But being a touring car, you are able to actually travel as a family. So it's unusual in that sense. The gear changes in the middle there with a wooden top to it. That's all original. These seats, in fact, were completely remade here in this country. Again, it talks to the quality, as it were, of what's available in this country. Leather trim is on the doors and on the lower side of the dashboard, so it's kind of matching colour all the way around, really, in the interior. The roof, that's original. That's not leather by any means. That's a sort of breathing material. I don't quite know how you'd best describe it. There you go. That lets a bit of air in, as you might imagine. You can get it through airflow. You don't find many cars with a hand throttle. You have an accelerator, you put your foot on, that's for sure, but it also has a hand throttle. So in those days, before the modern motor cars came along, this is one way of being able to cruise on a motorway. You just pull a little knob underneath here, and you can generate the right speed you want, and then take your foot off the throttle, and it just cruises at that speed. Mr. Bertoni, he's very famous in designing Italian cars in particular, and that's his symbol. That's a B, in fact, as you see on that kind of shield there, and that identifies the car as having been designed by Bertoni, who designed a lot of Alfa Romeos, or a number of Alfa Romeos, but also other cars like Ferraris and Maseratis and others. He put his name to a number of different. I imported these tyres, in fact, to fit this particular car. And the rims are original, and the hubcaps are original. I've had some of the hubcaps re-chromed here just to bring back the shine to them. But otherwise, this is how they come. You know, this is as new, really, isn't it? It looks new, doesn't it? The bumper is original. I brought this in. I brought lights in. I brought this all came in from Italy. These are Alfa Romeo caps on the wheels, where you put the air in. It's kind of unusual, really. You have to sort of tug it upwards to get into the car. And the window doesn't have a frame. When the windows go down, there's no frame around it. You can see what I mean. So the door is just opens up like this. This lamp cluster has been designed to fit into a seat, as it were, within the bodywork there. And this is the proper name for it. It's a 2.6 litre Sprint. I think with a 50-year-old car, there are two things. You've got to be patient with it. It doesn't work in the way that modern cars do. It might not start in the morning. There's no point getting uptight about it. You just got to find the reason why. Just be a bit more patient with it. And whilst it accelerates quite quickly, it's not as quick as some of the most modern motor cars when it comes to it. And it's a car that you treat gently, to be honest with you. At this age, I suppose it's the right thing to do. So it's a fun thing to have, but it's not a racing car. It's not the sort of car that you take out on the road and blow smoke out of, so to speak. But it's a comfortable drive, but you let it do its own thing. Sometimes it's temperamental. I get this car, I can't get it to start, and that's very frustrating, because the day before I've got it to start. You've got to live with all the idiosyncrasies of a 50-year-old vehicle. And that's, you get used to that when it comes to it. You get a bit irritated at the time, I must admit. But you're patient with it. And even the tyres, quite different from the modern day tyres. You know, they're not radial tyres. So they are radials now, to be honest with you, but they're quite narrow tread. So I guess it's fair to say the older it gets, the more carefully one drives.
For car enthusiasts like Gailing, it's not just about the destination, but the journey. So how did his love for classic cars marques start, and did all begin from the Alfas?
I've always been interested in cars, not necessarily fast cars, but classic cars and slightly unusual cars. So that interest has existed right back from teenage days, so it's still with me here and now. But I became interested in Alfa Romeos many years ago when there was a showroom in this country that was opened up in Koinange Street, selling just Alfa Romeo cars. This was in the late 1960s, thereabouts. and I used to walk past the showroom on my way to work very often in the morning, and it just intrigued me, these wonderful Italian motor cars sitting in a showroom there that were kind of looking me in the face every time I walked past. And so I was kind of drawn into this touring and sports cars, it was called at the time, and there were two very energetic young salesmen, stroke owner, there to greet me, and showed me around the showroom, as you might imagine, and really peppered my interest in the make and model of the cars. And that started me on thinking about Alfa Romeo cars in a fresh light, frankly. Seeing them online, seeing them rather in real terms here in Kenya, was quite different from just reading about them in magazines. So I made a sort of mental note about this situation and thought one day I'm going to have one of those. Anyway, time passed, not too many years passed, and there was a time I was leaving Kenya for a short while. I'd been transferred to the head office of a firm I was working with, and I walked past this showroom for the last time, as it were, and they were trying to sell me the car. And I said, well, I'm going to be abroad for 9 months or thereabouts. How does that alter things? And they said, well, tell you what, why don't you take delivery in Europe, where the cars are made, in Milan in particular. And I said, well, everything's possible, I guess. I could take delivery there and perhaps use it in Europe a bit, and then drive it across to England, have it there in London where I was working. All kind of open discussion. I wasn't quite sure where it was going to lead. So the owner there said to me, I tell you what, you can buy this car duty-free here in Kenya, because you're going to be abroad for 9 months. You can take delivery of it in Milan from the factory where they're made, which appeals to me, I tell you. And if you'll just give us a timetable, we'll have the car ready for your delivery, for your receipt, as it were, in Milan. And then you can drive it through Europe and end up in Britain, spend your time there, and we'll ship it back then when you finished your contract over there, and end of 9 months it turned out. So this is what I did. And then this particular model was in a lean-to, really, shed in Karen, and it belonged to someone I knew, but had been very, very neglected. It took about 4 years then to restore it into this kind of condition. And this is one of the fantastic things you can do in this country. You know, we've got engineers, we've got all kinds of competent people who can upgrade motor cars, who can do a very fine job. For example, the entire interior was stripped out. All of that has been redone entirely in leather from cattle skins that you can actually choose yourself, the colour and the degree to which it's been processed. All that could be done in this country. And providing you bring the spares in, as I did from Milan, I used to fly those in as needed, then you can pretty well start again with the basics, as it were, of an old car, very neglected, and build it from the ground up. And this car was taken to pieces. Every single piece was removed from it and carefully laid out in a workshop, every single piece. And then we ended up with just the bodywork, as it were, and it was put on a spit, if you know what I mean, like a barbecue. And it could be rotated, so if you're dealing with the upper side it would be this way around, if you're dealing with the underside it would be turned. But the point was, it was done that way in order to be able to spray it consistently, front to back and top to bottom. So that's how it started in its own way. And this paint is available in this country. Again, I mean, in this country you really can do anything. You've got very, very well qualified folks to be able to restore a car like this. You haven't got to do it all yourself. In fact, it would be impossible to do it as a single person. But as I say, leaning on the competence and the skills of Kenyans, you can end up with a vehicle like this. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's It's not a car I drive every day, as you might imagine. It's a sort of show car in its kind of way, and I just enjoy tinkering with it, occasionally taking it out for a run. But otherwise, it's unique, frankly, in this country. Taking 4 years, it's certainly it's a test of patience in its way. In those days, we didn't have all the communication means that we do here and now, so in dealing with Italy was quite difficult, and not everybody spoke English language and all that kind of stuff, so getting spares in was a story in itself. And I won't bore you with all that, but the long and short of it was, you can surmount all those things if you have a bit of patience and take a bit of time over it. My objective was actually just to restore the car to the best possible condition we could do in this country, and then to treat it as it were, as a valued possession, frankly. I had no intention of showing it, that wasn't the intention at all. But of course, once the thing was on the road, then people began to notice. I wasn't in a hurry to rebuild it. I wanted it to be done properly. And as we went to the point of actually reducing it right down to its last nut and bolt, I thought I will buy all the necessary pieces to do it. All the glass is imported, for example, the windscreen and the side windows and everything else, because originally that had sort of worn and was not new long after. But yeah, I suppose the end game really was to get an unusual car on the road in this country, and then enjoy the benefits of that over a period of time. When I bought it, I actually didn't realise that it would take so long and be quite such a test in bringing it into this condition. I certainly didn't anticipate 4 years. But at the end of 4 years, I thought, well, that's it. I've done what I wanted to here. I'm not sure I want to start again with something else. What I'll do now is enjoy what I've got here and enter it into the Concours. I was arm-twisted into doing that very quickly, as you might imagine, by the folks that ran the Concours. They wanted to see a different car on their show, which I did, and in fact it's been in the Concours now for the last, I don't know how many years, perhaps 20 years, something like that now. Each year it features in the Concours, and that's its major outing, to be honest. I mean, that's just, I think that's where people can enjoy it most. You saw it there, and others have seen it there over the years. It's in great condition. It's probably not old enough to be a classic winner at the Concours. It's the older cars in the 1920s, 1930s, that I think stand a better chance of winning. But it's not. I don't put it in it to win it. I put it in just to have a day out, be with friends and folks whom I know in the motoring world. We're there for the appeal of taking part in a motoring event of one sort or another, and the fun, frankly, is showing the car. As I say, I certainly don't go with the intention of being number one. I was very surprised to find this year, and happily surprised, I guess, to find it came second. But that isn't the end product. The fun it's a super day out. You'll know from the time there. It's a wonderful event, frankly. It's probably unique in Eastern Africa, and maybe elsewhere in Africa, I don't know. And it's just a great day out. It's extremely well organised, and there's food and drink, and all your friends are there, and it's a nice crowd in the audience, and it's just a wonderful day, candidly, isn't it? It's a day to mark in your calendar if you haven't been, but long may it continue. It's been going now for 50 years, so it really is a definite mark on the calendar, isn't it? One or two people have driven it, but I don't encourage people to be honest. Some of the Alfa enthusiasts have been around here, for example, in not recent times, but in times gone by, and been more than a bit intrigued in the car, and asked if they could drive it, and they've done so. But it's merely a sort of drive around the block and that kind of thing, nothing too extravagant, if you know what I mean. If it's going to be damaged, I want it to be me that damages it. And in fact, at the Concours, one of the risks of being in the Concours is that people unknowingly can damage cars like this by coming up, leaning against them, and with a sort of perhaps a belt or a purse beside them, and it scratching it, and that sort of, not intentionally, but just everyday kind of enthusiasm, I suppose it's fair to say. We're not trying to keep the public away, we're just trying to keep a sort of logical distance, as it were, between the prospect of damage and the enthusiasm of some of the car members. It's the youngsters who get very, very excited. It really is. I mean, I've had them climbing in and out, under my kind of supervision, but they love it. They'll sit in the driving seat and imagine themselves, driving this old car. So that's quite fun. I don't think there's a step up that I can make, to be honest with you. I think I've probably got as far as I'm ever going to get with the quality and everything else in the car. So it's year in, year out, it's very much the same, to be honest. The paint job stands out above all else. It really does. And the guys who are doing the painting were real specialists. As I say, every part was taken off the car so that it could be sprayed properly, candidly, with 9 coats of paint. And you can see, that was polished in between every time it was sprayed, and it has come out like this as a consequence of skill, candidly, of the people who are doing the spray painting. The paint itself was supplied, and there was a lady manager of the company that supplied the paint who was very enthusiastic about it as well, and to see the outcome of it, her company's paint on it, was something that she made some very positive comments about, which is rather nice. But it's the paint job that stands this car out. It's not an original colour, but it's this maroon. The original Alfa Romeos tended to be a much more brighter red on the whole, but I favoured mixing a paint that had a bit of a darker tone rather than the sort of brilliant red. And it really does, it stands out. This car stands out because of that. If you see this car on the road, the first thing you do is think, oh, that's a nice colour paint, that's a good paint job. That stands out.